Hi, welcome to the Deep Dive, where I, the creator of the Deep End, go more in depth about each of my shows. This is Season 2, Show 5. To start off with making, I was feeling very uninspired. There was that weird middle area, like between Halloween and Thanksgiving, where I knew what I wanted Show 6 to be, but I needed something that led into it. So this kind of was just going to be the show that leads into the big thing of Show 6, which, if you haven't listened to it, if you're like listening to these in order, was a very like ambitious thing I did, so I didn't want this one to stick out too much. And especially with it being after Halloween, I didn't want it to overshadow it or top it or anything like that. I wanted it to be more like just a general show. Like out of all the ones I've done at that point, I just wanted it to be nice and simple. I know in the last deep dive I said I wanted to strive to top the previous one, but a bigger issue I had was I was in a bit of a time crunch. Now, this one wasn't too bad compared to another show, but the big issue I was having with it was I didn't get the script done until like that day. So, pretty much, I didn't have a lot of flow into it. I was just kind of like, yeah, this is what I'll say, and this is what I'll play, and that's it. That's why that one is probably the most lacking in terms of like sound effects and whatnot. But I just wanted to make sure it was good enough. And lastly, while I was in the middle of making it, like I said, I don't think too much about the story because the idea is that it's just the context for the songs because everything else is what I want you to pay more attention to. But as I was typing it out, I was kind of like, hey, wait, I feel like I've heard this plot before. And that's where it dawned on me this is similar to NSR or No Straight Roads and Trolls World Tour. In other words, this idea of a music society where like music is kind of like everyone's life and whatnot. And just, I was heavily worried that someone would think I was just straight up trying to copy the ideas. No, at the very minimal, I'll say I take inspiration from them, but for the most part, I was trying to write it in my own way. Now, when it comes to performing them, I was just very low energy. Just, I didn't really care about this show that much. Like, I still care about all my shows, but this one just wasn't that. So, doing it just didn't really, I wasn't really flowing into it that great. But I was still focused on trying to perform it as good as possible because this was supposed to be the like where things started to shake up. The I don't want to call it the calm before the storm, but essentially it preludes the intenseness that comes with show 6 in terms of like subject matter. But even if I wasn't trying to go that hard with it, I was still very disappointed at my mess ups because I'm like, okay, this is now 14th show I've done and I haven't even bothered to really make sure I got the mess ups at their absolute minimal. Like even with like making some of the future shows that you'll hear later, I was very upset at my inability to make things flow smoothly. Now when it came to listening to it, I mean, there's really not much to say. Like as I said prior, I wasn't really that focused on it. I was more trying to get the point across, if anything. I do still like the story, like the idea of it. I love funk, but I still was more focused on trying to deliver the message. But another thing is, as I mentioned on the day of the show, I had somewhere to be, so I don't actually remember all that much about it when I was listening back to it. I could listen to it all again, but especially when I get home later, I have to make sure I have time to actually upload these if I want to keep it on this day as promised. And then ultimately, as I was listening to it, I was like, okay, sure, this will flow smoothly, whatever. I was more focused on the show after because that was the one I was truly going to try to top show 4 or the Halloween special. But even then, I feel like it's a lesson in try to tackle each show with the same energy. And that is all. So if there was anything that you wanted me to go more in depth about or just a general question you had, feel free to drop it into the comment and I'll try to get to it as soon as I can. And with that, you have yourself a great day.